Hey there guys, today we've got an alternative method for a pretty well-worn farm that's got its pros and cons. Let's get into it. So before we get into this first farm, I'd like to note that right after we'll be covering another farm that could be done by literally every class in the game at another location, and the timestamp for that, if that's something more your speed, will be provided in the description. The video shown for this first farm is an excerpt from one of my live streams over on Twitch. I explain what I'm doing in the live stream as well. However, YouTube is not too keen on me saying the F word, so we scrubbed the audio for this video's purposes. I quickly cobbled this build together as a 55 alternative to the Vengeful Waskanai build that's commonly used out here. I'll also be providing a template code for the Vengeful Waskanai build in the video description. With this build, the idea is to pull as many enemies at once as possible, and then bounce around the clusters of mob and spread degen as fast as possible. We have Retribution equipped, and although it's only doing 1 damage, that's enough to prevent any ranged enemies from naturally regenning if they're left out for a degen cast or 2. The whole main area is done in typically 1 to 2 pulls depending on the spread of enemies upon entering the zone. The enemy spread here is wildly variable, much like a lot of other Prophecies maps. Sometimes there's 35 plus Tengu all standing in a ball and ready for the first pull. Other times there's 12, and that's just a little disappointing. So it's important that we discuss differences and similarities between this build and the Vengeful Waskanai build, which is arguably the most common way of farming here. First of all, both builds can take between 8 and 16 minutes to complete the area, with the Ritualise build tending to be on the longer side. However, while this build is typically faster, it cannot kill any of the bosses aside from the Mesmer and Elementalist boss. So what you give up for a great increase in speed based on spawns is the potential for more elite tomes. I personally don't see this as much of a sacrifice though, as I find that it's much faster to do other boss farms if you need tomes. Both methods tend to average between 50 and 100 feathers per run, and oddly enough, if it's feathers you seek, I'd highly advise not farming this during Favor, as Favor makes a lot of what is typically direct feather drops and salvageable feather items into more armors and weapons. Before we move on to the next area, I'd like to note that both this build and the Vengeful Waskanai build can farm the imps in this area quite easily too. However, when I'm here for feathers, I see it as a bit of a waste of time, but if you want those potential scale and coal drops, they're here for you too. Another important thing before we move on is that I'd like to note that any class can farm this area in normal mode with a Spirit Spammer build and a little bit of patience. As is tradition on this channel, if there's a way to do it as every class, I'm gonna say something about it. Though, because it is in normal mode, feather drops are a lot smaller. And speaking of farms that are doable with every class and Signet of Spirits being the way to achieve it, this next area is also a great place to farm feathers, and much like the last spot I showed you, there's also some builds that make it viable in hard mode as well that are posted in quite a few places. This area is so cruise control as a Spirit Spammer that we're not even gonna do a run-through video. This map tells you literally all you need to know. You get out there, spam, kill all mobs of Tengu you see, rinse, and repeat. The next screen will have some other notable locations for feather farming in case you'd like to research those as well, and hopefully this sets you on the path to victory. If there's another material you'd like to see covered sooner rather than later, please give us a heads up down in the comments. That'll increase the likelihood that it's the next video that we put out. Have a good one, guys. Cheers.